Kamala Flippin' Harris is the vice president of the United States. And as you know, she's a ridiculous person. And she's just been marvelous, hasn't she? Throughout her vice presidency, she's had some amazing lines that should all be on T-shirts.
You know, when we talk about our children, I know for this group, we all believe that when we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community.
So well said. So deep. I've been contemplating that line ever since she uttered it. There's also this one, of course.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
Tell me more about time.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Yeah, that's true. And as time passes, of course, there are countries who get into conflicts. In fact, would you describe one to me?
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Fair enough. Excellent work. Thanks for boiling it down for me. For more on all of this, that is the downfall of Kamala Harris as a person and a politician, we bring in Emily Jashinsky, the culture editor over at the Federalist, also the co-host of Counterpoints. And she says we need to prepare for the downfall of Kamala Harris. Emily, I don't know if I can handle it, but I'm getting prepared.
You know, Vince, nobody could have foreseen this. In some sense, though, it's true, because one of the things I did when I was writing this piece for the folks at the Telegraph is go look at her polling numbers. And you remember this, like, she was on a steady climb when she was thinking about running for president. She had just won that Senate seat with a lot of support from Hollywood. She was this, like, really activist attorney general in California that was, even caught the attention of the Obama administration. She was Glamour's, like, 2017 Woman of the Year, 2018 maybe Woman of the Year. And her polling numbers were going up right alongside the media coverage. And as soon as she became vice president, they just started going down because she's publicly had such a hard time looking like she has a real grip on the role.
Yeah. Well, also, I think a lot of that is that, prior to her joining the ticket and then eventually becoming vice president, people just didn't really know who she was that well, did they? I mean, it was like a lot of it was just the product of the media's spin and the Democrat Party's spin about how great she is. And as a result, as her name ID went up a little bit, people were kind of on board. But remember, in the primary, even California voters weren't interested in her. She was constantly polling so low, she never even made it to the California primary.
Well, and another important thing about that, she didn't even make it to Iowa, but she wasn't doing well with black voters either. And that was something that Kamala Harris was supposed to kind of have in the bag. In fact, it was Joe Biden, she had dropped out by the time they got to South Carolina.
Right.
But Joe Biden he clinched South Carolina largely because of the black vote, because he had support of people like Jim Clyburn. But that was never an advantage that Kamala Harris had, even though a lot of people expected her to have that advantage going into the race. It's one of the things that made people really like Kamala Harris. So it was almost like, she had the national spotlight on her, but when it really hit her, that's when she started to crumble. She's totally, like, even from the perspective of, like, a Democratic strategist, her stock has just dropped precipitously because she has not been able to handle the spotlight.
Yeah, she's entirely out of her depth. And it seems like she's angry about it, too, because we every so often we get pieces that she's bitter that she was given what she considers the hard tasks in the White House, like the border. She's just upset that this big problem was laid at her feet.
Yeah, I think that's true. And actually, her husband was on Bravo recently and was asked if they watched the show Veep. And he said, kind of deadpan, we're living it. But what's funny about the show Veep, aside from everything, but one of the things in particular with Kamala Harris that's funny about it is it was in the Biden era when Biden was vice president, and it was really making fun of this idea that presidents offload their most undesirable tasks, like the border and the, quote, root causes, which is what Joe Biden gave Kamala Harris as soon as he took office. They offload that on their vice president. So the vice president just shoulders the burden of all of these extremely difficult tasks, and it's a thankless job because
Yes.
you don't actually have a lot of power. I really think we're seeing that with Kamala Harris, but to your point, it actually also started before. Her popularity started to dip before we saw that happen, too.
Well,
so it's a little combination of both.
Also, I didn't watch the whole series, but I did watch some of Veep. I thought it was really amusing. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the lead in that show. But one of the features of her character is that she's kind of callous and incompetent. It's a weird thing for Kamala Harris to say, yep, a husband to say, yeah, we're living it, when the lead character basically doesn't care at all about the people.
Well, and the lead character is, supposed to just be this political creature, someone who is totally cynical. And that's another thing with Kamala Harris that I think has hurt her, is one of her biggest moments in the primary was on the debate stage, basically implying that Joe Biden, by partnering with Strom Thurmond
Yes.
and others on the issue of busing, had been perpetuating racism. And then she turns around and joins his campaign ticket.
So
I think it does. It looks bad.
is there a lasting impact from her behavior there? Obviously, they decided for power reasons to make her the running mate. But I keep hearing these stories that Jill Biden in particular loathes Kamala Harris, that she does actually still really not like that moment, that Kamala Harris said that her husband's a racist on national television. Do you think that's true?
I definitely think that's true. I don't think it would be leaking if it weren't true, because I think what we're seeing is these battles in the press with Biden and Harris to tell the favorable story to them. So Kamala Harris, really frustrated with getting saddled with so many undesirable tasks, is obviously, you can see how her camp would start leaking against Biden, but then Biden having this really unpopular vice president. By the way, she's less popular right now than Mike Pence was when he was vice president, and Mike Pence got the worst media treatment that you could ever possibly imagine. And Kamala Harris, to the contrary, it's like the media has to be dragged kicking and screaming to report on the crazy things she says, like the children of the community are children of the community. They don't want to have their knives out for Kamala Harris, but they're almost forced to. So it's remarkable that her number could be that low, compared to Mike Pence.
So what kind of trap are Democrats in right now electorally with the Biden-Harris ticket?
It's crazy. I mean, again, I think I started the piece just by saying, if you were in 2018 a Democratic strategist and someone was like, Joe Biden in 2024, he's going to be president and he's not going to be doing very well. Poll numbers are going to be bad. And, it's going to seem like he's really getting old, elderly, senile. If someone said then, don't worry, his vice president is Kamala Harris, that would really actually, it's laughable now. I can't even say it without laughing, but then that would have really reassured people. But now all of the leaks are about Biden looking instead to perhaps Gretchen Whitmer, or Democrats, the DNC looking instead to people like Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. Kamala Harris is barely even mentioned in these conversations about who could come after Joe Biden. And I think it's because the writing is just on the wall.
Right.
She has not handled the spotlight well. So it's remarkable, because usually this would be an easy choice.
And they're in a trap. They're in a trap of their own making, too. They can't dispense with her. Normally, under a normal circumstance, if this was just on the merits, you could say Kamala Harris has decided that she no longer wants to do this job. We're bringing in a different running mate for this cycle, and you might get a day or two of people be like, what happened? Some intrigue behind why she left. But the way the left operates, they're so wedded to identity politics that if you were to dispense with Kamala Harris, they would go absolutely crazy. They'd go nuts over that because everything's wrapped up in race and gender, and they would see that as some sort of sexist, racist attack on broad groups of people were you to remove her.
100%. I mean, that cannot be said enough. To your point, that is exactly a trap. There's just no way that elderly, straight white male Joe Biden in this environment can just ditch Kamala Harris. I mean, I think the best thing that could happen for them is it's sort of, if something happened to Joe Biden, it gets kicked to the DNC. That's what the process is like. And so you would have basically this incredible battle for delegates and superdelegates.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't necessarily, fall, the nomination wouldn't necessarily fall to Kamala Harris. But if Biden said, I'm stepping down from the ticket, not if, something happened to him that literally kicked him out of office. He has some type of grave medical situation, that would be one thing. But if he is just stepping down from the ticket, it goes to delegates, and that's where you have.
Yeah.
Why would Gavin Newsom do a televised debate with Ron DeSantis? Well, it's to make an appeal there.
So you're telling me there's a non-zero chance that Democrats do have a brokered convention this year?
Oh, I mean, because as you cover all the time, Vince, it's just there's always, when you have Joe Biden, who, by the way, went to the doctor today, but his doctor said he doesn't need to get a cognitive test because his neurologist doesn't think he needs one, which is, Vince, just a real relief to hear.
Oh, yeah. I was so worried.
Yeah, but yes, so there's always a non-zero chance with him, just on, in public and in private. We've heard people say that he doesn't seem like he's up to the task. So because he's elderly.
I mean,
so
you know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen is like 2-3 years from now, we're going to look back. There's going to be all these people releasing memoirs and books behind the scenes, and everyone's going to be admitting it. They'll be like, yeah, he was really in a bad state that day. He was having a bad day that day. He wasn't able to come out at all because he wasn't being able to think straight. And everyone's going to admit it. They're going to want to make money off of all of this, and they know now, and they're not admitting it out loud. It's like the craziest
And to that, all you can say to these people is screw you, because they do the same. Like right now, they will still, all of the same people will go after, how Ronald Reagan was allegedly senile towards the end, but it's still towards the end of his presidency, and his staff didn't do anything about it. Republicans didn't do anything about it. But there's nothing. I mean, there's no comparison between late-term Ronald Reagan and Joe Biden every single day of his presidency.
I know, it's wild. Hey, let me quickly move to another elderly politician. That's Mitch McConnell. He announced today that he's going to be stepping down from his leadership position in 8 months. 8 months from now, he'll finally step down. What do you make of the timing of this announcement?
Did anyone check the stock market to see what happened to his wife's family's shipping company? I'd be curious on that. The timing here is interesting. Sean Davis of the Federalist actually has been sort of bending the ear of folks on the Senate side who say this is not so much a concession from Mitch McConnell as it is a power grab to make sure that he's here through election season, even though he also, the guy has had moments that are uncomfortable because he's so frozen in public and seems incapable.
Yes.
You hear from people inside the Senate all the time that he's physically weak, that he's very frail. So he's apart from being one of the most unpopular politicians in the country, he's also seems like he's someone who's not physically able to do the job.
Yes.
So to cling to power through November, I think it's it doesn't look like a graceful bowing out, which is what Mitch McConnell seems to think it is. He said something like, you have to know when to step back. Well, that was a while ago, buddy. I don't think you should be getting patted on the back for that.
Yeah, it was our mutual buddy, Chris Bedford, who once told me that we shouldn't have leaders that you can punch assassinate, which I think is a good rule of thumb. We should be able to take one hit at least. Thank you very much. Emily Jashinsky, always good to talk to you.